Hello detectives, and welcome to my video for May. I have so many exciting things going on at the moment. First of all, last week I finally got to announce that I have written a very special exclusive short story in the Murder Most Unladylike universe called The Case of the Missing Treasure, and that will be out on the 5th of July only from Waterstones, because Waterstones were the people who asked me to write it. This is such a privilege to have been able to do. I loved doing it, and I really hope you will enjoy reading it. Now, I have some very good Book 7 news, and that is that I have seen the nearly final cover for Book 7. I know what it's going to be called. I pretty much know what the cover is going to look like, and fingers crossed, we should finally be able to announce what that title is and what that cover is next month in June. That's what I've been doing, but of course I've been reading a lot as well, and this month I think is particularly exciting in terms of new books. So here is what I have been reading in May. And the first book I've chosen this month is The Company of Eight by Harriet Whitehorn. And the first thing I want to say about this is how absolutely beautiful the cover is. I love the gold foil. I love this illustration of all the acrobats. It's by Maria Serdican, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's kind of hard to miss this on a table in a bookstore if you see it. You may know about Harriet Whitehorn from another series she's written, the Violet series, which is a detective series about a girl called Violet. And that is a really fun series, and this is her first book not in that series. The Company of Eight is the first book in a new series by Harriet, and it is a magical fantasy adventure series set on a world called the Longest World. Now, this world is pretty much made up of lots and lots of different islands, and the basic way you get from island to island is of course by boat, and so most of the people on this world travel around by boat all the time. The book starts with a girl called Cass, who's an orphan, and all she wants to do her whole life, she has wanted to join the circus boat and become one of the most famous acrobats in this world. It's really hard to join the circus boat, not only because you have to be the very best acrobat in your town or your city, but because the circus boat only goes to each town or city once a year. Cass has been getting herself ready for the circus boat. She thinks she's all prepared to take the audition, but then on the day of the auditions itself, the woman who looks after her sends her on an errand that means that she misses them. She misses the circus boat, it's gone, and she thinks she's going to have to wait another year, and she can't do that. She just wants to follow her dream too much. So she decides to hitch a ride on another boat and follow the circus boat around the Longest World, trying to get to it so she can audition. Lots of things happen to Cass that means that she has a lot more to deal with than just becoming an acrobat on the circus ship. She gets swept up in this very dangerous world full of thieves and pirates. She suddenly finds herself in very, very scary situations and dealing with people who are not very pleasant. This is such an exciting adventure. It's so beautifully described. I absolutely love the world of this book, and I cannot wait to go back to it in future books. If you love fantasy worlds, if you love magic and adventure, if you love brave girls saving the day and striking out on their own to make their fortunes, and if you love acrobatics and acrobats and the circus, you will really enjoy this book. I would say that it is for about 8+. Anyone who reads my books can read this. The next book I've chosen is for about the same age group as The Company of Eight, but it is a very different story. It is A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan. A Place Called Perfect is an adventure story, and it's set in a slightly magical world, but it is also very much a mystery story, which of course drew me to it. It is about a girl called Violet, whose parents suddenly move to a town called Perfect. And this town isn't just called Perfect, it really does seem to be perfect. It looks wonderful, everyone behaves perfectly, everything is absolutely perfect. The only catch is that everyone in the town is blind. Turning up at the town, living in the town, suddenly makes you go blind, and to stop this happening you have to be given special rose-tinted glasses that you put on, and as soon as you're wearing them you're not blind anymore, you can see the whole town, everything is fine. Violet's family came because Violet's father is an optician. He's somebody who deals with eyes, and of course he's trying to fix this blindness problem. Violet didn't want to come at all, and now she's here. She's hating it more and more and more. She's really uncomfortable with all this perfection, and she doesn't understand why nobody else agrees with her. Everyone else seems to love being perfect, and she just hates it. And then one day something happens. Violet's glasses get knocked right off her nose, and she starts to hear things and then see things that she wasn't expecting. She realizes there's a lot more to perfect than meets the eye, and she meets a boy called Boy who's going to help her find out exactly what is wrong with perfect and work out how to fix it. This is a really exciting mystery adventure. It's really quirky, it's really funny. You will really enjoy it if you like solving problems. And I'm also really excited about this book because in just a few days I will get to meet the author Helena, because she and I are on a panel together at the Listowel Writers' Festival in Ireland. I am just about to fly out for that, so if you do have tickets for that, I really hope you enjoy it, and I hope you come and say hi to me afterwards. But even if you don't get to be there, you should definitely read this book. It's really fun. It's a very exciting, funny mystery story with a bit of a twist. And I would say that it is for anyone 8+ who loves mystery stories. My next choice is also a book about a girl who has to become a hero, but in this one the stakes are even higher. It is Shah by Roshani Chokshi. And it is the most exciting, fun book that I have read for a long time. It is all about a girl called Aru who suddenly realizes that she is descended from the Hindu gods. Shah thinks she is a normal kid. She lives at the Museum of Ancient Indian Art and Culture with her mum, which is a bit not normal, but other than that, she's about as ordinary as you can imagine. In fact, she's a lot more ordinary than a lot of the kids she goes to school with. They're all richer than she is, and she has to do a lot of pretending that she is very wealthy like they are, that she goes on fancy holidays like they do, that she's got a parent who is always around. And her mum isn't around very much, the truth is. Her mum is always on business trips. Her mum seems to kind of ignore Aru, and Aru kind of feels upset about that. And then one day, Aru gets followed back to her home by bullies. They are teasing her and tormenting her, and to freak them out, to put them off, she does something she should never do. She lights an ancient lamp that is in the museum that her mother has told her never to touch. But of course she does, to try to get these bullies off her back, and there are terrible consequences because the lamp isn't just a normal lamp, it's an enchanted lamp, and inside the lamp is someone called the Sleeper, who's been locked up because if he ever gets out, there are only 9 days to stop him ending time and ending the world. And that is how the story begins, with poor Aru wearing pajamas suddenly thrust into this fantastical, magical, mythical world and suddenly having to be the hero that saves the universe. I love reading about mythology. I love reading books about pantheons of gods, which means groups of gods, like the Norse gods and the Greek and Roman gods. The Hindu gods are gods that I know a bit about, but not as much as I'd like to. And so this book was really interesting because it told me a bit more about the Hindu gods. But if you know the Hindu gods really well, as Roshani does, you will be in for even more of a treat, because you will see all of your favourite gods and deities and demigods recreated in a really fun, funny, exciting book. I just cannot emphasize enough how much fun this book is. I would say this is absolutely the book for you if you love books about gods like I do, if you love Maz Evans's Who Let the Gods Out, if you love Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series, you will love this book. Now this is the American edition, so the English edition looks a bit different. It's got an outline of the Sleeper, the big creepy sleeper, looming over Aru. But if you go looking for Aru Shah and the End of Time, you will not be able to miss it, and I really think you should. This book, I would say, is for 8+. The next book I've chosen is for slightly older readers. It is The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill. And again, what an incredible cover. Look at that beautiful silver foil and the beautiful illustration of the mermaid. This cover is by Paula Escobar. We all pretty much know the fairy tale of The Little Mermaid, originally by Hans Christian Andersen, more recently a Disney movie. We know that the Little Mermaid has beautiful red hair. We know she's called Ariel. We know she collects things. We know she wants to be up where the people are. She's fascinated by humans. We know she sees a handsome prince and falls in love with him, and she wants to go to him, but she can't until she goes to visit a wicked witch who gives her legs at the expense of cutting out her tongue, meaning she can't speak, and she has to make the prince fall in love with her with just her beauty. Everyone could tell the story of the Little Mermaid pretty much as I just told it, and that is, again, pretty much what Louise does in this book, apart from the fact that the mermaid isn't called Ariel, she's called Maureen in this story. But because Louise is an author who's really interested in feminism, really interested in being a woman, in writing about the difficulties of being a woman, there is a lot more going on at a deep level in this book. Louise really wants to think about how incredibly weird the central premise of The Little Mermaid is, that you could fall in love with someone immediately from just seeing them without really knowing what they're like, and then you would be forced to make them fall in love with you without talking to them, which is actually one of the most important ways to get to know someone, to know if you do actually really want to be in love with them and if they love you back. So this book is all about how incredibly difficult it is to be the Little Mermaid, and by extension how incredibly difficult it is to be a young, beautiful woman expected to be silent and lovely and thoughtless. And Louise captured that really, really well. It is a beautiful book that works on a lot of different levels. If you love fairy tales, if you love feminist retelling of fairy tales, if you've often felt like the women in fairy tales don't really get to have much of a voice, this is the book for you. It is absolutely wonderful. You will not be able to put this book down. It is such a quick, such a wonderful, such a striking read. And I would say it's for anyone who loves fairy tales aged about 14 plus. I always end my videos by talking about one classic book, one book that I loved when I was younger that has gone on to influence me as an author and as a person. And this month's choice is influenced by the fact that The Case of the Missing Treasure, that upcoming short story of mine, is set in the British Museum. When I was a kid, my mother worked at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, so I got to run around the museum all day, and I imagined how great it would be to be able to stay overnight, to be able to live in a museum. And so when I read this book, I absolutely loved it, because it's all about two kids who run away to do just that, to go live in a museum. It's from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, one of the hardest titles of any book ever, and it's by E.L. Konigsburg. This is the story of Claudia and her little brother Jamie. Claudia is a planner, she's very organised, she's very precise, and she has decided that what she wants to do is run away. But she doesn't just want to run away, she wants to know where she's going to. And she decides that the best place to run away to is a museum. It is in fact the Met Museum in New York, one of the biggest and most beautiful and most opulent museums in the world. She decides this very carefully. Her family live on the outskirts of New York, and she chooses one of her brothers, Jamie, to run away with her because she thinks he's the best one at running away. So off they go together to the museum, but when they get there, they realise it's a bit different from what they thought it would be. It's harder to live on their own, it's harder to not be discovered. They really enjoy the museum, there are lots of wonderful things to find, but it is quite difficult to live on their own there. And while they're there, they realise something else as well. They realise that there's a mystery at the Metropolitan Museum, and it's a mystery about one of the sculptures there called the Little Angel. And they get absolutely fascinated by this art history mystery, and they realise they will do anything to find out the truth of what happened and to find out the truth of this little angel. This is a wonderfully written book. It is so incredibly beautifully written, but it's also really exciting. It's a really fun book. It's a wonderful book to read and read again. I think I've read it about 10 times. I read it a lot when I was writing the Guggenheim mystery because it really influenced that as well. Claudia is a fantastic main character. I love her. She's not somebody you see very much in literature. She's very interested in planning and sorting things and being organised, and I like those qualities, and I like Claudia. I knew when I was a kid that I would get on with her if I met her in real life. And I also really love mysteries, so this book, which is all about mysteries in history and the impossibility of working out what really happened in the past, just really, really pulled me in when I first read it, and it still really interests me today. As I say, this is one of the most fantastic books I think I've ever read. It's one of my all-time lifetime favourites, and I think you will love it as well if you love the idea of running away to an interesting place, if you love art and art history, if you love mysteries, if you have an annoying sibling who you sometimes love and sometimes don't love as much, this is the book for you. It's absolutely fantastic, and this is the edition you can get in England at the moment. And this book, I would say again, is for anyone 8+, but like all the books I've talked about, and I think especially for this one, you could read it at any age, older than 8, and you will get something wonderful out of it. Even if you're an adult, read this book for the first time, you will really see something really special and wonderful in it. So that is it for me this month. Do check back here next month when I'll be doing a lot of announcements, a lot of things that I can't tell you, lots of secrets about my books that I'll finally be able to announce in June. So do not miss those. Keep watching this channel, keep watching my website for lots of Book 7 news and more. But until then, have a wonderful month and goodbye.